Hello, I'm Marie from Highlands and Isles Against Fracking, and I'm going to speak to you today about the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, or Ttip for short. Ttip aims to harmonise barriers between the EU and the US. These barriers are our prized and hard-earned regulations and standards that protect our labour rights, environment, food standards and digital privacy and banking regulations. Ttip is a trade deal conducted entirely in secret between the EU and the US, supported heavily by the Tories and the Lib Dems. Ttip Light is supported by Labour, who still want this deal, but only if certain exemptions are made. Let's break this down. What specific things are under threat by Ttip? Public services, especially the NHS, are in the firing line. One of the main aims of Ttip is to open up Europe's public health, education and water services to US companies. This could essentially mean the privatisation of the NHS. Public services are normally protected from free trade agreements. However, because commercial companies now in part provide the NHS, it will only be protected from Ttip if explicitly excluded from the treaty, which it's currently not. Ttip will give transnational corporations the right under the ISDS, the Investor-State Dispute Settlement, to claim massive compensation if the government introduces initiatives such as public health regulations, health protection measures and health promotion policy that could potentially reduce transnationals' future profits. Ttip will also affect standards of healthcare professional practice. A government's ability to regulate professional standards and qualifications for healthcare workers could be restricted, with worrying implications for patient care. If the Scottish NHS is not exempt from Ttip, it will be a disaster. The Scottish Government has so far protected the NHS as much as it can within the limits of the Scottish budget. However, Ttip will mean that we will not have a choice. We will be forced to open up the NHS services to multinational companies in Europe and America. If we refuse, we will be sued by corporate lawyers in secret interstate courts. The UK Government's position is now absolutely clear. They are not seeking exemptions from Ttip. This is a quote from a letter from Unite Union to MSPs. On the 19th of February, Lord Livingston, the Minister for Trade and Investment, gave evidence to the Scottish Parliament's European and External Relations Committee. He appeared to be saying that the NHS was fully protected from Ttip. Unfortunately, this was just another performance of smoke and mirrors. On close inspection, none of his arguments actually addressed the issues that people up and down the country are so concerned about. Yes, thanks. There is no proposal for a robust carve-out of the NHS from Ttip, and the agreement could still make NHS privatisations irreversible. They also want to relax banking regulations, but Ttip cuts both ways. The UK, under the influence of the all-powerful City of London, is thought to be seeking a loosening of US banking regulations. America's financial rules are tougher than ours. They were put into place after the financial crisis to directly curb the powers of the bankers and avoid a similar crisis happening again. Ttip will remove these restrictions, handing all the powers back to the bankers. This will hasten a newer, bigger crash than the last time, and even tougher austerity to bail them out. The American Chamber of Commerce is also using Ttip as an opportunity to push for the higher US financial service regulations to be watered down. In this day and age, why would the EU and the US want to give the powers back to the bankers, aided by the Labour government in charge at the time that caused the crash in the first place? Let's not forget the Tory Lib Dem clean-up operations that ensued after it. Rising austerity and taking the lifelines of the disabled and sick away from them using ATOS, And we have to go through it all again, with the new contract being passed to Maximus, who are being paid $595 million over 3 years to carry out work capability assessments. Jobs will also be at risk. The EU has admitted that Ttip will cause unemployment as jobs switch to the USA, where labour standards and trade union rights are lower. Jobs at risk include manufacturing, pharmaceutical, NHS and agriculture. Main political parties argue that Ttip will bring increased jobs and growth. There is little credible evidence for these claims, which rely heavily on an assessment made by the Centre for Economic Policy Research, or CEPR. CEPR must be viewed with caution because of its poor quality and because the research cannot be seen as unbiased. CEPR is funded by the same international banks that are keen to see Ttip signed. The main body of research claims that growth from Ttip will bring a family of 4 an extra €545 a year, but this gain is not per annum, but over 10 years. This is a quote from Geronimo Capaldo from Tufts University. At the same time, Ttip will put extra pressure on countries that treat their workers well in terms of pay, because these countries will find themselves in fiercer competition with the US and other economies with low production costs stemming from low wages. Increased unemployment and falling wages will reduce demand and send the economy into a downward spiral and increase the pressure on public finances. Capaldo further predicts that Ttip will see a reduction in the working class's share output. He predicts a transfer of 7% of UK GDP from labour to profit income. This would have a devastating effect on the working class's living standards, and with increased power to corporations, a weakening of the working class's ability to fight back. Ttip is undemocratic in its process. Its ongoing negotiations are done in secret, kept away from MPs and MEPs. When powerful people in government and business conduct things in secret, it's obvious they don't want the domestic population to find out what they are up to. Once negotiators sign the treaty, Westminster, like other EU member states, will only be able to vote to accept or reject the Ttip treaty as a whole. They will not be able to amend it in any way. Ttip will be a backdoor for the frackers. Ttip will limit the power of governments to protect communities and the environment from risky technologies such as fracking. The talks will weaken or roll back democratically agreed safeguards put into place to protect the environment and the citizens for the sake of corporate profits. Ttip will limit the government's ability to regulate the development and expansion of fracking. And it will dangerously thwart the government's efforts to address climate change and to protect communities, and will expand fracking by removing the ability of governments to control natural gas exports. The Ttip deal will give more rights to companies through a clause called ISDS, the Investor-State Dispute Settlement. If included in this deal, this will enable corporations to claim damages in secret courts or arbitration panels. If they deem their profits are adversely affected by changes in a regulation, or policy, this will threaten democratically agreed laws designed to protect communities and the environment. Companies which claim their investments, including expectations of future profits, are affected by a change in government policies, could have the right to seek compensation through private international tribunals. US companies or any company with a subsidiary in the US investing in Europe could see these far-reaching investor rights to seek compensation for future bans or other regulation on fracking. Arbitrators have a strong bias towards investors and no specialised knowledge of our climate or fracking. Companies are already using investment agreements to claim their damages from governments, with you guys picking up the tab. Given the need to protect communities, it is critical that Ttip does not undermine efforts to tighten regulations for the natural gas industry, including closing existing loopholes and affecting existing bans on moratoria and fracking. Energy companies are already looking to the courts to roll back fracking bans. The inclusion of an investor-state dispute settlement in the Ttip would give them an extra legal tool, in some cases a second chance to challenge public interest policies. Falkirk has two pro-fracking MPs, Michael Connerty and Eric Joyce, and I had a wee look at their websites and I was quite shocked. It's a quote from Michael Connerty's website. It's entirely logical to seek to find and extract any shale gas in Scotland, but we need to ensure that the profits come back to Scotland. We need to set up a new onshore gas extraction fund for unconventional gas like coal bed methane and shale gas. I want a separately run commission that contributes specifically to the communities who are taking the brunt of the damage and environmental destruction. I've never heard something from an MP that's so contradictory. It's okay to frack. As long as the communities are compensated for the damage and environmental destruction, and he admits that this will happen. Eric Joyce from his website. NIMBYs in my constituency of Falkirk are deeply opposed to fracking. The anti-science of the anti-fracking movement is a minority self-indulgence. But the shocking anti-jobs rhetoric of Unite, the SNP, and a small number of local NIMBYs who seem determined to talk down the value of their own homes is profoundly dangerous for Falkirk's strong manufacturing base and the many, many jobs which go with it. They should pack it in. Maybe they'd like to form an orderly protest outside some butcher selling foie gras or something instead. And this guy is your MP, and I was raging for you guys after I read that. Two pro-fracking MPs, well I hope that in May he can get rid of Connerty. But it's not all bad. You currently have two candidates standing this year, John McNally and Martin Dave, the SNP, that both oppose fracking and will do the utmost to see it banned completely. Your voices will be stronger together with these two candidates, as your choice is limited to UKIP, Labour and the Tories. Pro-fracking and pro-Ttip parties. UKIP, the Tories and the Lib Dems. Ttip and fracking light are Labour. Other parties in Scotland that fully oppose Ttip and fracking are the Scottish Greens and the Scottish Socialist Party. Ttip and the secrecy surrounding its negotiations are a reckless, unjustified destruction of our rights. Ttip without ISDS is still a threat, as it will strip Scotland of all our rights. The employment and labour rights that the previous generations fought so hard for, and the environment and food safety standards we strive to protect. Ttip is not for the benefit of the working class in Scotland. It's purely a trade treaty for the benefit of the big faceless corporations and their shareholders. Ttip is not something to be picked over like a pick and mix, opposing some elements or favouring others. You're either fully opposed to it or support it. That is why we must support the European Citizens Initiative campaign and stop Ttip. If you need further information on Ttip, please look at John Hillary, Warren Mont, Global Justice Now and George Monbiot, and you can also sign the ECI at Stop Ttip. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening to me today, and if we can unite together, we can stop fracking in Ttip, so let's do it!